I had one opportunity where I actually spent some time talking to Hubert Humphrey in 1976, a couple years before he died. I was a college student in Minnesota, a sophomore college student, and there was an essay contest in the school paper about a national essay contest for anybody, grad students or undergrad, on welfare reform. And I wrote an essay and I won basically a year's tuition at St. Olaf College, worth more than that much in money for this contest. And Hubert Humphrey was the one in Washington presenting it to us. And I remember at the luncheon he joked about when the waiter asked, did you want to iced tea or something? He said, milk. Minnesota dairy farmers will be happy to hear me say that. So he was, I only had one chance to. I'm not a person who grew up being like the people. I wasn't a Minnesotan by birth. I came here like Humphrey did because I love this state. And so I don't have those long history of personal stories with Hubert Humphrey. I just know reading and paying attention over the years, the civil rights, voting rights, food for peace, Peace Corps, you name it. So many of the ideas, the legislative agenda, the progressive vision was Hubert Humphrey. It was Hubert Humphrey. He was an idea factory, and so he influenced me so much that way. I mean, his Education of a Public Man, I think that was the name of the biography about that time, and beautiful. I mean, he was an incredible leader that way. And then I worked in 1977, I worked for a year for then Congressman Paul Simon. Paul Simon was a close friend of Humphrey. Matter of fact, when Humphrey was dying, Paul Simon was the one who gave Humphrey the chance to speak to the entire joint session of Congress. The first time they had ever had a sitting member of the Senate speak to the U.S. House of Representatives. And that was the year Humphrey was dying. It was a tribute. Humphrey joked about when he was speaking from the rostrum. He said, this is where the president comes to give the State of the Union address. He says, you don't know how much it means to me to be able to speak here. It was a very personal Hubert Humphrey. And so through my ties with Paul Simon, I felt some other ties. But it wasn't that I have all these history of stories with Hubert Humphrey. It's that he was so right. He fought for the right things, and something that I see missing in our modern politics. One of the things I admire most about Humphrey was the courage. I've been using the illustration in recent years that if people who believe in a positive future where we're going to make progress as a society, I call it progressive vision. People who believe in a progressive vision have all been so frustrated, they think, well, we can't really afford to take care of people's health. We can't afford to take care of their educational needs. We can't afford to give them all the opportunities we'd like to because we don't have the money. I keep thinking if the progressive movement and politicians and so on of today were around, the example I give, if they were around during the abolition campaign 150 years ago, we'd still have slavery, but we'd have limited the slaves to working 40-hour work weeks. And we'd be so proud of the progress we'd made that we'd forget we still had slavery. And I think that's what I mean by, where's the courage of our convictions? If we think slavery is wrong, fight against it. If we think we need health care for everyone, fight for it. Not for ensuring more people, but health care for everyone. When Hubert Humphrey thought, civil rights meant everybody deserves fair treatment, it wasn't popular. It wasn't popular at all. So if he was taking a poll, well, of course it would never pass. Of course it could never have this happen. He went to the Democratic National Convention and fought for something that they said could never happen. And it took 20 years to make it happen. But he had the courage of his conviction, the courage to put his political career on the line in order to do the right thing. To me, that's the message we ought to have. The one message we could take from Hubert Humphrey is, have your dream and have your vision, but then be willing to give up everything for it. Be willing to risk your career. Be willing to fight for it. Other countries, politicians might give their life if they take the wrong side of an issue. They actually execute people who lose elections in some countries, in some forms of government. Our country, we might lose an election. Why can't we stand for it? Hubert Humphrey, he lost the election he cared most about, the presidential one. He lost it, but he fought for the right thing over and over and over, and he kept coming back, and that's what we should learn from. Keep coming back and fight for what you believe.